All right, so we're one sleep away, hopefully, from raising the Stanley Cup for a second consecutive season. You see him on ESPN's The Point. Arda Ocal joining us here. Arda, great to see you again. The story of these Stanley Cup Finals, it's unequivocally Brad Marchand, yes?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I use the term mercenary in a positive way. I know that a lot of people use it in the context of sports, more positive than the actual definition, which has a little bit more of a negative connotation to it. I'm using this purely positive. Brad Marchand could very well be on the Mount Rushmore for greatest mercenaries in sports history. And I say this for his contributions on the ice. He's had signature moments. He's had overtime goals. He has contributed greatly at all ends of the ice. And he's setting records in the Stanley Cup Final, having his best Cup Final run of his career. And off the ice, Zaz, like he's taking over long-standing traditions. Like the Rats are about him now. And he's taking his teammates to Dairy Queen. And when he entered the chat, as soon as he got traded, the player chat, he was jokingly calling all of his teammates scumbags and pigeons, you know? Like, he's just, like, has there ever been someone that has fit more like a glove being traded to a rival team like Brad Marchand?
So I don't want to ask you about that part, if there's been a better fit, but production-wise, is there a comp for what we're seeing?
I mean, he's, like, we've seen a lot of players contribute when they get picked up at the trade deadline, certainly. But like, I mean, Corey Perry comes to mind. I know that he's like less recent, but like he's been having a great postseason as well. But like Brad Marchand is on another level. Like you could like, to me, I get it. Sam Bennett is the favorite for the Conn Smythe Trophy if the Panthers win, simply because of how productive he's been on the road. He's setting goals, records, etc., franchise records. But to me, Marchand's my pick for Conn Smythe. Like, that's how good he's been.
Yeah, it's interesting because you pick Marchand. Bennett seems like he's the Conn Smythe leader right now, certainly odds-wise. Why do you think Bobrovsky is not higher?
I mean, just because I would guess that for a goaltender to win the Conn Smythe, got to have a few shutouts, got to have stand-on-your-head performances. Bobrovsky has been good and has been reliable. And I would say that those two traits, especially when there are high offensive achievers and producers in the playoffs on your team, those offensive players usually get the nod for the Conn Smythe more than a reliable, consistent goaltender. Even though we know that goaltending is probably the most important position in hockey, one of them, certainly, right? But if you have a reliable goaltender that's posting, I don't know what his save percentage is, but let's say it's like a 915 or 910 or whatever, that's a great save percentage. But like, if there are players like a Bennett and a Marchand that are performing out of their mind, that's going to grab the headlines. That's going to grab the narrative, and that's going to sway the voters, quite frankly. So that's why I wouldn't be surprised if Marchand and or Bennett are the ones in the lead for the Conn Smythe, and why Bobrovsky may not be getting as many votes.
I don't want to jump ahead and assume like the Panthers are going to win tomorrow night. I hate doing that, you know. But let's say the Panthers do win. Bobrovsky, multi-time Vezina Trophy winner. He would be a back-to-back Stanley Cup winner. Like, where does he like? What does that do for his legacy if they win tomorrow or Game 7?
I'd say that should cement him for the Hall of Fame. I think that's a pretty fair. Like, I mean, multiple individual trophies, multiple Stanley Cups. I'd say that's enough of a case for a Hall of Fame career. I would also, I mean, he cements himself as one of the greatest goaltenders of this generation, certainly. And yeah, I think that's where we would put him.
Does it make sense that at 36, 37 years old, whatever he is, I keep asking people this, like, is it possible he's still in his prime?
I don't know how much long, like, I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, people surprise us all the time. Like, logic would say that, you know, if he's at his peak, we don't know if he'll go higher than this. Maybe he can sustain, certainly. But it is impressive, to your point there, that he seems more reliable, makes more clutch saves. That word clutch, more now than he has ever been. That was the big knock against him, right? Like,
Yep.
The idea that he can't come up clutch in those big moments. And now he's on the precipice of winning a second Stanley Cup as the starting goalie. So, and he wasn't even the starting goalie last year, right? Like in game one. So like that just goes to show, to your point, like how far along he's come and how, but not just in his play, but public perception. I think that's a big thing, right? Like public perception is Sergei Bobrovsky is a reliable goaltender now, today, as we speak.
I mean, Arda, we were pushing him out his first 3 years here in South Florida. We wanted him gone. It wasn't Alex Lyon. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Alex Lyon, who was the starter at the beginning of the playoffs in 2023. Yeah. And Lyon did a fantastic. Lyon helped them get to the playoffs, that year. And then Bobrovsky got the nod, and they went to the Stanley Cup and lost to Vegas. And we love him since then. But we were pushing him out after those first 3 years here, and now he's probably the greatest free agent signing in the history of the franchise. Considering where we're at right now. Arda, what do you make of Conor McDavid's performance so far? He has the 1 goal, and of course, it came down 3-0 in Game 5.
I don't think any of this falls on McDavid. I think we will obviously be saying he has to produce more. He had his first goal of the series, but he's been contributing greatly. He's creating plays. He's making passes. He's getting points. It can't all rest on McDavid. Of course, McDavid and Draisaitl are going to grab all the headlines, but it can't rest all on him. Calvin Pickard, now Chris Knobloch, Oilers coach, said those goals were not on Calvin Pickard in Game 5. But the fact remains that's 5 goals on 19 shots. A lot of them were quality goals. Don't get me wrong. Like, they were solid goals. Brad Marchand is out there looking like Mario Lemieux against the North Stars. Like, what was that? I'm like, my goodness, right? I can hear Bob Cole commentary. Look at Marchand. Oh my goodness, what a goal! Have you ever seen such finesse? It's just unbelievable. So for McDavid, though, I think if he loses this Cup final again, we're going to start having the conversation that we were having with Alex Ovechkin before he won his Stanley Cup, and that is, will he ever win a cup? Will he go down in history as the greatest hockey player to never win a cup? I maintain. And I apologize for saying this on a Panthers focused podcast or show here, Zaz, but Conor McDavid winning the Stanley Cup, that image is required for hockey history.
Yeah.
So but we're going to start having that conversation now. But optically, it's 2 straight finals. He loses both if they lose the cup this year. And we're going to wonder about his legacy and have these conversations, whether it's fair or not to him.
I mean, that's part of why seemingly, I don't think it's just us here in South Florida with an us against the world mentality. I mean, seemingly everyone is rooting for the Oilers because that is the image that's supposed to take place. Conor McDavid is supposed to raise the Stanley Cup.
The solution to all of this, Zaz, is that McDavid just goes to Florida next year and becomes a Florida Panther. That solves everyone's problems.
Let's tell me a little bit about, from a national perspective, before he won the Stanley Cup last year, what was the general reputation of Paul Maurice as a head coach?
Someone that he had that very much. We'd like to see him win the Stanley Cup because he'd paid his dues and put so many years in the NHL. He was always a great interview. He was always great to chat with off camera, one of the great hockey minds. I don't know if there was too much of will he ever win one, and will it tarnish his life? It's funny. It was less of that with Maurice, more of that with Ovechkin back in the day, and maybe McDavid now, maybe because they're players and they're superstars, But with Paul Maurice, it was always about. It would be nice to see him raise the cup, and I'll maintain, Zaz, that's one of my, other than Sakic to Bork in 2001. Paul Maurice raising the cup and just how it all unfolded, maybe my favorite cup raise in history, because he's being interviewed by my colleague Emily Kaplan, who did an amazing job that entire postseason. She's the best. She's mid-interview with Paul Maurice, and then he gets a tap on the shoulder, and he's like, "Excuse me, I have a visitor." Turns around, and before he raises it, right, he's just looking at it, he's just soaking in the moment. And then the elated raise, and he has his eyes closed, and he's letting the emotions just swell over him like sweat, that's just, that to me was one of the most iconic cup raises in ever.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Raymond Bourque, because it's such a famous call, right, from Gary Thorne. ladies and gentlemen, Raymond Bork, and he raises the cup.
Yeah.
Like that. If you didn't mention Maurice there, like the one I always think about is Ray Bork. And was that in 99, 2000?
2001. 01, where they beat the
2001.
Devils in Game 7, yeah.
Yeah, that's always the one I go back and think of. Do you expect this series to end tomorrow night? The Panthers this postseason have played with their food in previous opportunities like this.
So I expect the Oilers to come out hot. It's 3 straight games where they've been down multiple goals in the first period. I expect them to want to eliminate that completely. I expect them to storm out of the gate with a sense of desperation and the Panthers to play catch up in the first 10, 15 minutes of the period. And this feels like a Game 7 to me, but the Panthers could certainly surprise us because the way the series has gone, no one was expecting Game 3 and 5 to go the way it had, right? Like if you told me that based on 1 and 2, if every game was going to overtime, I think I'd believe you, So. Right. But I don't know, man. Like, this feels like a Game 7 situation. Like, this feels like McDavid is like, no, dig the F in. We're having a speech. We're rallying the troops, and everyone is contributing. The question mark is, what will the goaltending look like? Like, who's going to start? Will they be good? Because that could sewer the entire plan, right? Like, that's the thing with Bobrovsky's is like, no matter who they pick, Skinner and Pickard are the B-side to Bobrovsky.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm here, whoever Knobloch decides to go with. All right, if you want to stay with Pickard or you want to go back to Skinner, like, I still got my guy back there. Like, I take whoever you want. I'm still going to feel really good about it,
Exactly.
Arda, excellent job. Of course, all the coverage all season long. And thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate it.
Anytime.